Now we're learning Torah, 100%. This is what everyone's doing right now. Okay, good morning, everyone. Our learning is Nishmas Mendel Mariam Bas Kalman Ruvain, her Neshama Shem Aliyah. The last thing we spoke about was spit, right? Was that the last thing we spoke about? Like the spit in the eye?
Oh, yeah.
I don't think we went further than that, right? Okay, I don't think so. I think we're at Amar Mar Ukva, Amar Shmuel.
I have us on 108
Before? Okay.
Yeah.
Shalach, like Shalach Le Rav Yanai?
As soon as this thing comes up, I'll find out where it's
think.
marked. Yeah.
I think that sounds right, yes.
Okay, fine. Shalach Le. Okay, yeah? Okay. 108 before.
Bar Levi, Havakai. That's where we are.
Where are we? Bar Levi? Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Okay, Bar Levi. Have a kai kamed. You have Shalach Le Rav Yanai? I'll start a few lines before just to be safe, because I wasn't sure myself. Okay, Bar Levi, have a kai kamed Mar Ukva. Bar Levi was one standing before Mar Ukva. Chazye to have a mayetu fasach. He saw that Bar Levi was closing and opening his eyes using a colorium. Right, we spoke about this colorium, this certain type of medication that could be used on Shabbos. And however, he was going ahead and closing and opening his eyes, which makes it very apparent that he was doing something for medicinal purposes. Amarle kulei hai vadi lashar Mar Shmuel. Mar Shmuel allowed a person to put a colorium on one's eyes, but not in a way that's so obvious that what you're doing is medicinal. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more today. There are certain things that could be interpreted, you're just doing it because, like, everyone does it, and certain things, like, it's obvious you're doing it for medicinal purposes. Like, a good example of this is, like, a cough drop, right? So, Ricolas, right? Do you have a Ricola because they taste good? I do. If that's what's around and I need something for, I don't know, my breath or whatever it is, I'll pop a Ricola. Do I have a cough? Not necessarily, but sometimes you use it for a cough, right? So that's something which is not obvious they're using it for medicinal purposes. And then there's certain things like this. So the colorium, people put on their eyes just because. But if you're opening and closing your eyes, and it makes it very obvious that the reason you're doing it is because of medicine, right? So you have to. There's again. So maybe I don't know if we've taken the step back. So let's remind ourselves that there is a biblical prohibition. There's a malacha of grinding herbs on Shabbos, and typically medicines, they would. I mean, not even nowadays, medicines are made by grinding certain products oftentimes. So because of that, Chazal forbade a person to go ahead and use all medicines, anything for medicinal purposes on Shabbos, because of as a rabbinic decree around grinding things on Shabbos. Okay. Now there are certain exceptions, and we'll talk about some of those exceptions today. Like at what point are you allowed to take Tylenol on Shabbos, Advil on Shabbos, right? That's going to be something we're going to discuss today. At what point can you do? Obviously, if a person's life is in danger, then you're allowed to do anything. Is there any room in between, right? So that's something we're going to touch upon a little bit today. But it starts with this rabbinic prohibition against doing things which are for medicinal purposes. And within that rabbinic decree, it's only things which are obvious that it's for medicinal purposes. If it's something which anyone would do, like what's it called? A colorium, on your eye, which everyone would do, similar to like a cough drop, which again is fairly typical to just take a cough drop just for fun. If assuming it tastes normal, like it's not like a bad tasting thing, then that's going to be okay, even if you yourself happen to be using it for medicinal purposes. Make sense? Yes. Okay, fine. Shalach le Rav Yanai lamar Ukva. Yanai sent the following message to Mar Ukva. L'shadolan mar mehanach ki learned Mar Shmuel. May the master send us some of those kaloria on Mar Shmuel. In other words, Mar Shmuel was like a master making these kalorium. And so Shalach le Mar Ukva sent back. He says, don't worry about the kalorium. Shadure mishadran alach. I'll certainly send it to you. To lo tematzar ayin ana. So you don't think that I'm stingy. Ella, okay, so in other words, don't worry, I'm going to send it to you. Don't think I'm like hogging all the personal recipes. I'm going to send it to you. But I want you to know. Ella hachim Shmuel. Shmuel said the following. Tova tipas sonin shachris. It's better to have like a drop of like cold water in the morning on your eyes. Okay, rechizas daim b'raglayim b'chamin arvis, and washing your hands and feet in warm water in the evening. Mikol ki lorin shba'olam, better than all the kaloria in the world. In other words, some basic like hygiene we'll call, like putting a little bit of water in your eye to clean your eye in the morning, and to wash your hands and feet in the evening to wash them from all the dirt. That's better than all these kaloria. Don't worry about the medicine. Just have what we would call basic hygiene. That's so much better. So yeah, I'll send it to you, but just trust me, you don't even need it. If you follow this regiment of washing yourself in the morning and the evening, you're in a much better place. Tani nami hachi. We have a brayso which taught the same thing. Amramanu Mishum Rabbi Yehuda. Tova tipas sonin shachros chitzas dram raglaim arvis mikol ki learn olam. Again, this idea, washing your eyes in the morning, washing your hands and feet in warm water in the evening is so much better than all these kalorias. Okay? Hu Omer. Ramana continues and said, Yad ayin tikatetz. A hand to the eye should be cut off. Okay, what are we talking about? Hand to the eye. What we're talking about, according to most Mefarshim, is that we're talking about in a scenario where a person did not yet wash their hands Tilas Yadayim in the morning. When a person did not yet wash their hands Tilas Yadayim, putting your hand to your eye, that hand should be cut off. In other words, it's really dangerous what you're doing. Putting your hand, there's the evil spirit, the Ruach Ra that resides on one's hands, to go ahead and touch, as we'll see, any of the orifices is extremely dangerous, and you should not do so. Okay, so Yalla Ayin Tikatzitz. So he's saying it in a very strong way. Your hand, the hand that touches the eye should be cut off. Yalla Chotim Tikatzitz. The hand that touches the nose should be cut off. Yalla Lepet Tikatzitz. The hand that is put into the mouth should be cut off. Yalla Ozen Tikatzitz. The hand that's put to the ear should be cut off. Yalla Suda Tikatzitz. Hand that's put to a puncture. In other words, it used to draw blood and make holes. So touching that hole should be cut off. Yalla Ama Tikatzitz. Yalla Lefi Tabas Tikatzitz. To one's backside, front, basically any orifices at all should be cut off. Yad legigis tikatzis. Also, a hand to a barrel should be cut off. In other words, a person should not be touching any food. There is a discussion in the postgame. What if a person touches food without washing his dime? Do you have to throw the food away? So some are machmir by a barrel based on this statement. If you touch a barrel of wine, you cannot drink that wine. For other foods, the postgame are makel, but it's even a discussion. In other words, you have to recognize it's not like a simple thing. There's an interesting discussion about what do we do. We have, you go to a restaurant and, maybe there are the workers in the restaurant. Okay, let's assume for a second it only applies to Jewish people. Okay, which is an assumption some make. So still, you have workers in the restaurants or whatever that aren't necessarily observant. They're not washing their hands to dime. What is that? Are you allowed to eat the food? Not allowed to eat the food. How does this work? Okay. I don't remember what they say, but bottom line is I guess we do it. But they find some loophole. But the bottom line is the terminology Ramona is using is should be cut off. Right? This is not like it's a nice idea. This is a pretty strong point that he's making. The importance of washing Tilas Yadayim, and especially the importance of it's often your eyes might be like you want to rub your eyes in the morning. You want to whatever. Any touching of any orifices, touching of any food in the morning before washing Tilas Yadayim is strictly usur, okay, and dangerous, okay, as the Gemara is going to explain. Yan Mesame, the hand causes blindness if it touches the eye. Yan Machareshes, it causes deafness if it touches the ear. Yan Male Polifos, and if it touches the mouth or nose, it causes polipos, a certain type of foul odor that comes from the mouth or nose. Okay, bottom line is it's not a good idea. Tanya, Rav Nassan Omer, further statement about the Ruach Ra. Bas Choron Hizo, this spirit is free. What does it mean? It's free. It's it's very powerful. Umakpedes achir chotziot of shalosh pa'amim, and it's there until a person washes their hands 3 times. Rav Yochanan, okay, Rav Yochanan says puch ma'avir bas melech. That puch, which is a type of mascara, type of mascara, it somehow removes the damage done by this evil spirit. I looked at the first, I did not get any explanation behind how this works and why this works, but somehow. This mascara is able to undo the impact done by this ruach ra. Uposek as a dima. It also stops tears because of, I guess, its thickness. Umar beser bafapayim, and based on the ingredients, it actually increases the hair on the eyelids. Okay, do you know what? Yeah, you sell it as okay. So if anyone wants to get puch, it's off. It's under the counter. Okay. Okay. Tani nami hachi. Unlabeled, yeah. Rav Yossi Omer, Puch Maber Bas Melech, Posik is Dima Mar Beser Bafapayim, writes the Brisa says the exact same thing. Amar Mogva, Amar Shmuel. Alin, now we go through different types of healing type of things. And okay, let's see first, and we'll explain what this means. So Amar Ukva, Mishmei Shmuel. Amar Ukva, Amar Shmuel. Amar Ukva says the name of Shmuel. Alin, Ein Behem Mishum Refuah. Alin. Okay, alin is a type of item that's being used. It's a plant. It has no effect on healing the eyes. So many Mepharshim understand, since it has no effect on healing the eyes, you therefore are allowed to use it on Shabbos, right? The context of this discussion is Shabbos. If it has no healing effect, then it's not seen as medicinal, and therefore people put this plant on their eyes for whatever reason. But it doesn't have medicinal purposes, and therefore it's allowed. Okay, Amar Rav Yosef.
So this puch we would not be allowed to use.
Correct. Probably for more than one reason. Putting on mascara on Shabbos. Right. Probably not a good idea. But alin, right? So there's some vegetable. Let's say, I don't know. Imagine those cucumbers that people, I don't know. Do they actually do anything? Exactly. So people want to put cucumbers on their eyes, right? So people want to put this vegetable on their eye. It doesn't, it's the cool thing to do. It's the trendy thing to do. It looks good on a picture, whatever it is. But does it, since it doesn't have medicinal purposes, you are allowed to do it on Shabbos, right? That's always going to be, it's right? If it does not have medicinal purposes, you could do it on Shabbos, okay? Rav Yosef, kusparta em hamishim refuah, coriander has no effect in healing the eyes. Again, therefore, you are allowed to put it on Shabbos. Rav Sheshes, kashus em hamishim refuah, hops have no effect in healing the eye. and therefore, if you want to put it on your eyes on Shabbos, that's okay. Rav Yosef, kusbarta afilu didi kashali. Coriander is even harmful to me. Now, Rav Yosef was blind. Okay, so he says that coriander not only is it does it not heal, but it's actually harmful. And what Rav Yosef is trying to say is that even though I'm blind, it actually has a negative effect on me. Okay, meaning on my eyes. Okay, meaning it certainly has no medicinal purposes. It certainly has no healing purpose, no function on the eye, and therefore I'm allowed to use it on Shabbos. Rav Shesha is the flip side. Gargira, rocket, okay, a type of herb, afilu di male, is even beneficial to me. Rav Shesha was also blind, and he's saying this type of herb, okay, is actually beneficial to him, even though he's blind. So certainly, a person who's not blind cannot use it on Shabbos because it's beneficial, right? Again, anything that's going to be beneficial is seen as medicinal, can't use it on Shabbos. Anything which is not medicinal, you could use on Shabbos. Amar Ukva, Amar Shmuel, Kal Minik Shru, all types of hops are permitted for use as medicines on Shabbos because they don't actually do anything. Levar mitruza, except for truza, one type of hop that is used for medicinal purposes. Again, so, you have to do an analysis. Is this something which actually does something? There's all these trends. People do this for all these different types of trendy purposes. If it actually is there for medicinal purposes, it can't be used. If it's there just because people think it's nice, it makes me feel good, whatever it is, then you'd be allowed to do so on Shabbos. What you can't do is medicinal, but if it's just something which anyone's going to do, not necessarily for medicinal purposes, you are allowed to do so on Shabbos. Okay?
And these are different types. You may ingest them, you may rub them.
Yeah, whatever the normal thing for people to do. And again, the example that comes to mind, I'm sure there are other good examples. The example that comes to mind is, again, the cough drops, the Ricolas, which taste good for me. I don't know, then that, for, is seen as normal. Any other examples that you come up with? I don't know, something that's it has medicinal purposes. It gets a little more complicated. Things like vitamins that kids use, like those are like called vitamins, a little more complicated. I'd be a little more hesitant, just because it's called medicine. You know what I mean? I mean, Ricola is like, okay, this has benefits or whatever it is. So, but the bottom line is anything in that category. Can't think of any other examples, right? Probably better not to. Yeah, I mean, if you then we're gonna get into soon. There's this whole spectrum. In other words, if it has no medicinal purposes, you can do anything. If it has medicinal purposes that people take, even if it's not for medicinal purposes, it's allowed. Certainly, a vitamin that doesn't take, an adult vitamin, unless the doctor says you must take it. I haven't found a scenario where I've told someone to follow up with the doctor. Typically with vitamins, you miss a day, it's no one cares. So I would typically stay away from vitamins. The kid ones make a bracha because they taste good. You're right. So that gets a little more complicated because But it's not. They're still taking a vitamin at the end of the day. I can't imagine. I'd venture to say that's asur. Okay. Similar type of halachas. Amar Chisa shrika tavya shri. Basting a roast is permitted. Okay, basting a roast. So what are we doing? Basically, it can't be too hot. If the roast is boiling hot, then you actually cook basting. Right, you take the egg and you smear it, right, like you do for the challah. So basting a roast, which is not boiling hot. If it's boiling hot, then you're actually cooking the egg. But assuming it cooled down, you are allowed to do so. Okay, you're allowed to do so. A person may have thought that it's you're fixing or you're doing the final touch of the roast. Kamash Malan, it's not. It's seen as just basically. It's not one would have thought this is there's halacha. You're not allowed to do the final step in the process. This is not seen as included in that. You're allowed to baste a roast on Shabbos. However, pifue be asur. Whisking eggs is forbidden. Do you know this? Whisking eggs is forbidden. It's brought down the halacha. I don't know why you would whisk an egg on Shabbos, but bottom line is it's asur. Why? Because it looks like you're going to cook them, right? So if you go ahead and you beat the eggs quickly, then that is actually asur. Devistu Ziri Avdele Lechia Bar Ashi, the wife of Ziri, basted a roast for Chia Bar Ashi, who was a student of Ziri. Again, so Ziri, he's the Rebbe. His wife goes ahead and based a roast for Ziri's student Chia Bar Ashi. V'lo achal, he didn't eat it. Amrlei, she said to him, L'rabach avdilei, I made it for your teacher, v'achal, and he ate it. V'alo achal, and you don't eat it. So the teacher's wife says, what are you? You're more machmer than my husband, who's the teacher. So the Gemara explains that this is only because Ziri had a view which wasn't accepted by Chia Bar Ashi, meaning Ziri litame. Ziri is consistent with his own reasoning. Amar Ziri, no sein adam yain salul umayim tzlulim. A person's allowed to put clear wine or clear water into a strainer on Shabbos, and you're not worried about a transgression. What would be the transgression? The transgression would be borer. right? Alma kimin mishtate hachi, since the water or wine can be drunk without being strained, lav midi ka'avid, you're not doing anything. So let's pause here to explain this. In other words, are you allowed to go ahead and place your water in a Brita on Shabbos? The answer is yes, or at least the answer is in America, the answer is yes, because you could easily drink, most people, 99% of the people would go ahead and drink that water without it being put into a Brita, right? In Israel, it's a little more complicated, and it really is somewhat subjective. If you are someone who would not drink the water, if it wasn't strained, then you would not be allowed to use a Brita filter on Shabbos. If you are someone who would use it, despite the fact you're probably eating little pebbles, which is fine, most people don't die, then it's okay. Then it's okay. I remember a story. Someone told me a story from the who was it? Velvel Soloveitchik, whatever, someone from Brisk. There are all these American Bachrim who would complain, like, oh, the water's so bad, the water's so bad. He's like, you guys, like, come to Israel, you're eating shawarma at 3 a.m, you're eating, like, crazy foods, and you're like, oh, it's the water. Like, it's not the water, you guys are eating, like, nachos. Anyway, point is that the bottom line is that this is a very important principle of borer. Borer is only, even if you are actually separating things. If you look at your Brita filter, even in America, you're going to find stuff, you're going to find some gook, right? But the point is that as long as it's something which you would anyway drink, it's not called significant enough that it's called borer. That's the halacha, right? If it's something that you would not drink, so that's the same thing with wine, right? The wine, right? Our wine is filtered pretty nicely, Rarely, depends on the type of bottle, but you're not going to find too much residue, if anything at all, on the bottom of a wine bottle, but certainly not through the rest, through the basic wine. But then, back in the day, they didn't have such filters or whatever. So Zeiri said you're allowed to filter, right? Even though something had say, because people would drink without being filtered, it was fine. Even though you would see residue, you'd see stuff coming out. So hachinami here too, by the basting, kevan demisachel hachi, since people will eat it without being basted, la midik avid, you're not really doing anything. In other words, it's only significant if it's something which people would not do without. But since people would eat the roast with or without the basting, it's not considered a significant halacha. Ravashi son, Chia Barashi, clearly held differently. He held you're not allowed to strain the wine, because at the end of the day, something significant is happening, even though I would have eaten it without it, and therefore, similarly, I'm not allowed to baste. Halacha l'maisa, we rule like Zeiri, that again, you're allowed to filter water, even though stuff is coming out, because you would drink it anyway. Okay? Fine. V'amar ukva, mishe gafa yada or raglo, a person whose hands or foot collided with something and was injured, tzom sabiyayin is allowed to reduce the swelling with wine. Vena choshesh, you don't have to worry. Okay, so basically wine, again, we saw this earlier, people would wash themselves with wine. Don't ask me, but that's what they would do. They'd wash themselves with wine, and since people would wash themselves with wine, I'm allowed to use it for medicinal purposes. It's like the Ricola. If this is how people would wash themselves, then, this is normal. If you'd see someone walk into a room and see someone washing themselves with wine, you'd say, oh, they're washing their hands, or they're about to eat, or whatever it is. So similarly, if I get injured, right, and I want to reduce the swelling, not a life-threatening injury, but I want to reduce the swelling, I'm allowed to use wine because that's seen as a Ricola. People do it for normal. What about vinegar? The Gemara asks, Amrav Hillel Ravashi, Ki avina be'erav kahana amri chalalo. Vinegar, already that's too much. People do not use vinegar to wash themselves, and therefore people to understand that you're using the vinegar for medicinal purposes cannot be done. Amarava. However, Rava says, Havahani b'nei Mechoza, those residents of Mechoza. Mechoza was a city, and they were not village people. The village people, we saw this a couple of times already in Masechah Shabbos. The village people are much more gruff. They are much less sensitive. The people in Mechoza were much more mifunak. They were much more like, what's the word? More like delicate or whatever. They were not, like us, basically. Okay, Kevin Mafanki, since they're sensitive, afilu chamra nami masalahu, wine would even heal them. In other words, they, like in the villages, they would wash themselves with wine, and wine was just like a good cleansing agent, and their skin was all gruff. You go into like the villages of Africa, and like no one's wearing shoes, and their skin is all calloused or whatever it is. So for them, wine was just a cleaning agent. But if you're a city person, like us, wine already, our skin is very tender, and for us, then wine would also serve as a healing purpose, and therefore a mifunak person, a sensitive person, cannot use wine because this was seen as a what's it called? Healing function. Okay, Ravina Ikla Levei Ravashi. Ravina once visited the house of Ravashi. Chazia hadricha did richa lechamra agabe dekare. A donkey had stepped on the top of Ravashi's foot. Does not sound comfortable. V'yasiv katsamis lebechala, and he was sitting and reducing its swelling with vinegar. Okay, so he seemingly is violating the halacha. Ravina said to Ravashi, Lo saval amar lahadam Rav Hillel chalamai. Chalalo, that vinegar is not permitted. Amalei gav hayad v'gav regel shani. That the top of the hand, top of the foot, you're allowed to use vinegar because it's more dangerous than other wounds. Now, the Mefarshim explain that it was seen as potentially life-threatening by the donkey stepping on one's hand. It could be life-threatening, and therefore, using vinegar was allowed. Now, the Mefarshim also add that if it's life-threatening, you don't have to just use vinegar. You could do anything, right? Life-threatening, you could do anything. Let's just go a little bit further, then we'll talk about some practical halachas. Ikeda Amri, there are those who have a different version of this discussion. Chazi de katsamis le b'chamra. He saw him reducing the swelling with wine. Amar lo savar la mar lahad amarava hanibnei mechoza keva de mefanke afilu chamra nami maslahu. Don't you hold the people of mechoza, since they're sensitive, even wine is forbidden. Umar nami amefanik, and you, Ravashi, you're also sensitive. You're like a city person. You're a learner. Your hands are not calloused. Your fingers are not. You don't have any calluses on your fingers. You're sitting and learn all day. So therefore, you shouldn't even be able to use wine. The injury on top of the hand and top of the foot is different. It's like an internal wound. You'll be able to desecrate Shabbos for it. So let's just figure, apply this to some practical halachos. So the truth is, the implication of this Gemara is a little bit off. The implication is, if you have an internal wound where you have some suffix, you have any doubt whatsoever, you are allowed and therefore obligated to be Mechal Shabbos. If there's any doubt of it being a life-threatening wound, then you are obligated to be Mechal Shabbos. Case closed, okay? If it's something which is not a big deal, you have a mild headache, you will not be allowed to take, and that's all of our discussions until now, putting the stuff on the eye and stuff like that. That's one of the things which are mild. There is a category in between, which is if it's something which the entire body aches, or it's something which would cause a person to be bedridden, right? So someone, let's say, someone called me last Shabbos, they just got, whatever, they went through some minor-ish surgery, but they would not be able to go to shul. They would be like in too much pain because of their pain. They'd be staying home and taking it easy. If they'd be at work, they would take off the day from work. So there, Chazal waived the rabbinic prohibitions, right? So this is an important category for taking Tylenol or Advil on Shabbos. Any situation where you would, the gauge, the way the Gemara discusses it is a person would be bedridden, but essentially you would take off from work. You would take off from, you would not be able to go to a regular function. Then that's considered sick enough that you would be allowed to take Tylenol. If it's less than that, sometimes you have a mild headache, you want to feel a little bit better, then you're not. Then that follows in the rabbinic prohibition. So again, mild, can't do anything on Shabbos. Life-threatening, you could waive d'oraisas. In between, if it's something you'd be bedridden, you could waive d'rabbanans. You'd be allowed to waive all rabbinic laws, and you'd be allowed to take Tylenol, etc. on Shabbos. Okay, and there are some other applications of this. Think about, you could think about other rabbinic prohibitions. A person needs medicine on Shabbos. Kind of came up once a little while ago. Somebody needs medicine on Shabbos. If it's not like life-threatening. Be allowed to send a non-Jew to go. If you have, like, it happened to be someone who had like an aide or whatever it was, they could send a non-Jew, which is all d'rabbanans, to go get their medicine on Shabbos, go pay, go drive, whatever it is. They could get their, whatever, they could get their aide to go ahead and do all that, because it's all, again, life-threatening. They certainly could do so, but even if it wasn't, they're sick, they're really sick, they could go and have someone do that, because that's all in violation of rabbinic laws, which are not, of medicine, which are not included when a person has that type of illness. Okay, let's stop over here. Have a great day.